culture, maybe by Wednesday or next Monday at the latest. Maybe if we go that far, we will not use up all of the time we have on Monday, because again, we don't have too much left on culture, okay? All right? So the lecture outline, so we went through the Korea, in numbers, significance of culture, what is culture, 5 keywords to understand its characteristics. And we talked about the first one, Korean symbols, and we were, talking about the Korean language, its characteristics last week. So we'll finish that up today and also talk about Korean beliefs, Korean norms, and I'm sure we'll not get to, Korean values. All right, so the 8th sort of topic is Korean values. So characteristics of the Korean language, we talked about the honorifics, hierarchical worldview, which is reinforced by the fact that we speak honorifics, and also we call one another by their titles. And I think I said it before. The only situations where you are called by your given name is by your parents, your older siblings, same-aged friends, and older relatives, and that's it. So in about, I would say, 90 to 95% of the settings you're in, you're never called by your first name, okay? So that's the kind of society we live in. The third characteristic is what I call familistic mindset. You see, the terms we use to refer to our older siblings are used in social settings, in workplaces, at schools, at universities, clubs, you name it. Okay? If you want to get closer to somebody, you use these terms. These are family terms. So I think foreigners would find it very strange even, right? And, when I am speaking to my friend and I'm asking, let's say she's hospitalized, I don't ask him, how is your mother? I would say, how's mother? As if she's my own mother, okay? So that's how we, again, have this family-like language. Also, elderly people, see, my real grandmother and old age person I meet on the street, we don't have terms that distinguish them. It's the same grandmother, okay? Grandfather. And maybe a little bit funny, when you go to a shop, and if you look a little bit old, they would say, 아버님, father, what can I get for you today, right? And those who are serving, who appear to be in their middle ages, people call them 이모, which is, aunt. So, and all of this culminates in the use of the term for country in Korean, which is 국가. It's a Chinese compound word, 국, which means country, 가 means family. So it's a country of families. That's what the name of the country means, okay? Next one is collectivistic mindset is reflected in the Korean language. And because we practically never, not never, but in examples like this, and so many, right? Instead of using the pronoun my, instead of saying my house, my country, my class, my university, it's always our university, our class, our house, okay? And even when you're introducing your father to friends, you would say, "This is our father," literally. Okay? So 우리 엄마, 우리 아이, our child. And well, you could imagine, right? If I go to a function hosted by my wife's friends, and she would introduce me to her friends as, "This is our husband," literally speaking, right? And this is a trivial fact or examples. You know how, again, this is something you may have taken for granted, but you should be reminded of the fact that many cultures, they arrange their names like this: last name first or family name first, and followed by the given name. But in the West, of course, it's the given name, so which reflects the importance of individualism or the individual identity, right? And also, I don't know if this is something that you have noticed, but the way we write the address is so opposite, okay? Like in the case of Korea, if you're writing an address, you start with the largest unit, province, followed by city, street, and apartment number or whatever. And the name comes last, okay? But look at, I'm sure you're more familiar with the example of the West, right? Where the name comes first, the smallest unit comes next, and the largest unit comes last, okay? So this is just a clear example of the collectivism versus, or how it is distinguished from individualism, even in the way the address is written. Now, fifth example, sexism in the given language is probably universal, and English has its own set of sexist terms, but although in recent like writings, whether it's newspaper articles or journal articles, it's almost gone. Am I right on that? Is it safe to say that sexist terms are no longer used, like mankind? So, you know, we definitely use humankind, or rather than always referring to someone as his, it's always his or her, and so on, right? But if in comparison to English, we have a long way to go, and I will share with you these examples. Some of them are really mind-blowing, okay? The fact that it is still being used, okay? Okay, here we go. So, reflecting the male-dominant nature of Korean society, many sexist terms are still widely used in Korea. There are some of these examples, okay? It's not an exhaustive list, but here we go. Terms for wife. Did you know that we don't have a neutral or respectful term for wife in Korean? Here are the examples. We refer to couple as 내외, okay? 내 referring to the wife, inside person, okay? And another popular term, 아내, 안사람, same thing, inside person. 집사람, house person. And 마누라. Until the Joseon dynasty, 마누라 was a respectful term. But over the last century, it somehow lost its sense of respect. It's sort of a term that the husband uses, sort of half derogatorily, okay? And again, these are the only terms we have to refer to wife, okay? As you would agree, wife in English is a neutral term, right? But we don't have any single sort of value-neutral term for wife, okay? Yes, we have a term called 부인, which is also a wife. But you could only use that to refer to wives of other people, but not to your own wife, okay? So That's why when I'm out with my wife and having to introduce my wife to others, I can only use English. Okay? You know, I always use the term wife. Okay? Second example, Korean mothers are often identified through their children. So instead of calling her by her real name like Kyung-hee, oftentimes it would be Cheolsu's mother. Okay? So this is where she loses her sense of identity. Okay? She sort of has the sense of identity through her child. Okay? Third example is the use of the term 처녀, which literally means virgin. As you know, or as you may know, throughout the Joseon dynasty, virginity was something that was totally imposed upon unmarried women. Okay? And this is still used to refer to unmarried women. Okay? And we use terms like this. 처녀 작품, the translation is in brackets, right? 처녀 출판, 처녀 비행, first flight. Well, the problem with all this is that you could simply change 처녀 to 첫, which means first. The fact that we still use these terms, including by women, shows you how insensitive we still are in regard to the use of sexist terms. And the next few are the killers, and I'm sure you agree with me. And I'll just show you right away. Womb in Korean is 자궁, and 자 means son. So literally, is a house containing sons. All right? And we don't have any other word for it, unless we stick with English. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. And the Korean word for meaning child or sons and daughters is 자식. Same thing. The first syllable, 자, refers to son. And these are words we use all the time. Okay? And Korean word for descendant is 자손, same thing. 자 refers to the word son. Okay? And it's a trivial example, but 유모차, stroller, the second syllable, 모, refers to mother. So it's something that is used exclusively by women or mothers, which is also very sexist. So you can just change it to 유아차, 아 meaning child, gender neutral. Okay? Next one, and I could ask you whether your own culture does this, okay? But we make distinctions between paternal and maternal relatives. Okay? It goes like this. We use a prefix 친 to refer to the relatives on the father side. 친 means real, true, or by blood. Okay? So again, only the paternal relatives are referred to with 친, but oftentimes this prefix is dropped. So any reference to a relative without any prefix usually means a reference to paternal relatives. Why? Maternal relatives are always, I would say almost always, are used with the prefix 외, which means outside. Okay? So 친가, blood family, here, outside family. And every relative on the mother side, 외 something. Okay? Outside grandfather, outside grandmother, outside cousin, outside aunt, not aunt, but outside uncle. Okay? And this same word outside is used to refer to foreigners. Same outside. So this shows you the level of exclusion that was imposed upon women, the mothers during the Joseon dynasty. Okay? And even extraterrestrial aliens, 외계인, same way is used. Okay? You know, one of the strange phenomena you could witness in Korea is if you happen to go to a funeral. Why? In Korea, funerals are held in hospitals. Okay, we have a funeral homes, but most respectable, most expensive funerals are usually held in hospitals, not funeral homes. The fact, if anybody holds a funeral at a funeral home, it's a sign that he or she does not have enough money. Okay? Again, most expensive, respectable funerals are held at hospitals. And let's say the person who passed away is a husband. And it'll list names, you know, son, name, daughter, name. On top of the bereaved woman, you know what it says? 미망인, which literally means someone who is not dead yet. Okay? So, implication there is that the woman without husband, it's not worth living. That's the kind of implication. I don't know if I'm carrying it too far, but that's what the term implies. And the last example is, this is not really language matter, but the fact that married women in Korea do not take their husband's surname. From the past, this practice was given, and it still continues. And some nationalist historians say that, you know, from a long time ago, we were more gender neutral than, or equal, than a lot of people give us credit for. And it's a total, you know, because it's a sign that women were not accepted as members of the husband's family. That's what it was. And same thing in Arab culture, without, I hope I'm not offending anyone, but that's the way it used to be, and it still continues. Okay? Women, by law, do not, of course now, because of changes in law, children can now take the last surnames of both mother and father. Okay? But I still haven't seen any wife taking on the last name of her husband. Okay? All right. Last characteristic on Korean language is what I would call nationalism / ethnocentrism. Did you know that even my books make the same mistake, I would say? We use the terms Korea, Korean, to refer to South Korea and South Korean, as if, you know, we have this right to do so, or in ignorance of the existence of the other half, right? And well, we have some examples which are similar to this case. And who are Americans? All right, here we go. Examples from the United States. Popular use of such terms and expressions as America. You know how some Americans, when they're asked where you're from, they say, I'm from America. or when they refer to themselves as American. And like if a professional team in any sports in North America wins, they call them world champions. And the baseball championship series is called the World Series. Again, official title, at least this Major League Championship Series is called World Series. But NBA champions or American football champions, they're not world champions because where did they get the right to use that term? But anyway, this is possible because what is the superpower country now? It's the US. So they have the, I guess, the right to do so. I mean, if Koreans say, I'm from Asia, people will laugh at us, right? Or if I say, I'm Asian, right? But did you know that in Spanish, they call Americans United Statesians, something like that, right? Am I right on that? Is any Spanish speak? Yes, yes. So, you see, you know, China, you know what China is in Chinese? Middle of the universe, or the middle kingdom, center. Because for a very long time, as you know, China was the most civilized country in the world. That's why they call themselves the middle of the universe, okay? And I think what the US has done is sort of following the trend. If you're big and powerful, you could sort of get away with these kinds of verbal expressions, okay? Any other examples of American use of certain terms that tend to sort of exemplify that they are the dominant superpower today? Okay. All right, now we move on to the third of the 5 keywords to understand, in our case, Korean culture, and it's Korean norms. And here, let me test your knowledge of the Korean rules of conduct, okay? So norms are established rules of behavior or standards of conduct. Norms are culture specific, so depending on what culture you're in, the norms vary widely. And there are prescriptive norms and proscriptive norms. So if you're not big on vocabulary, these two terms are good to know. Prescriptive, like prescription, things you should do. Okay? Prescriptive, things you should not do. Okay? Can anyone give me an example of a prescriptive norm from the 10 Commandments, or from Quran, or from Buddhist practices? Yes. Yes, that's prescriptive, something you should do. Honor your parents, okay? Actually, that's universal, you know, it's sort of in every religion. Okay, what about prescriptive norm? Something you should not do. Example from any religion. Anyone? Yes? Oh, do not kill. Okay, thank you. Thou shalt not kill. Okay, that's an example of something you should not do. Okay? Don't be jealous. Is that one of the 10 Commandments? No. Oh, you just gave me an example. Oh, not from any particular religion. Oh, there is something like that, right? Thou shalt not covet. Is it covet? Covet? Covet. Yes, something like you should not have a desire for someone else's wife. That's, I don't know if that equates jealousy, but good try. All right, thank you. So norms include, like etiquette or everyday customs, taboos, and so on. All right. Can you think of any examples of Korean norms? Yes? Don't speak loudly on trains. It's something that we would like to say, but I don't know if it's in the like a top 15, 20, but yes, it's a nice etiquette to have, not to speak too loudly on trains. Yes? Very good. You receive with two hands or pass objects with two hands. So one hand is permissible only among friends, same-aged friends, okay? Or someone younger, okay? And you know how when pouring drink for each other, we also use both hands. Okay? Anyone else? Yes. Yes. Taking your shoes off when entering a house. Yes. You show respect to higher ranked person, whether it's age or status. Anyone else? Yes. Yes. One of the most important ones, I would say. Greeting, when you are greeting someone, you bow, right? And I don't know if you know, but if you want to show more respect, you bow deeper. Like 90 degrees, have you? Anyone else? One more. Yes? Say that again, please. So you say, oh, okay, she's saying something like when you're leaving a restaurant, for example, you say goodbye. Now, see, something you do, and it's a nice thing to do, there's a difference between that versus norms. Norms are things you sort of should do, okay? Or half must. But saying goodbye when you're walking out of the restaurant, I think it's a nice gesture, but it's not like the norm, right? Anyway, here are some examples I have, and I don't know if you know about all of these, but let's see. Bow. I really like this picture, because in today's sort of time of cultural sensitivity, you see how the Westerner, or Caucasian, is showing sort of that he sort of knows a thing or two about being culturally sensitive, so by bowing, and yet there's this Asian guy, hey, how's it going, right? Use honorific in speaking to strangers, older people, superiors. Pass or receive objects with both hands. Well, since for foreigners, if you want to have some fun, and you know Korean, but pretend you don't know Korean, and don't use honorific, because you could pass, and no one will really get mad at you. In social settings, practically everyone is called by his or her job title or rank. Subordinates must greet or bow to superiors first. It's a very important rule. If you see someone older coming towards you, if you don't say hello first, oof, you'll be considered I shouldn't be using this term, but something to do with anatomy. Subordinates must use both hands to shake the hand of superiors when shaking hands. Avoid prolonged direct eye contact. Okay? It's a sign of challenge. Take your shoes off when it's entering someone's house. When eating in a group setting, wait for the oldest or the most senior person to start eating first. And also, you sort of have to be careful as to where you sit. See, there's all these rules. So you're lucky you're not living in Korea permanently. I'm talking about exchange students. There's just so many rules. You gotta sort of wait to see where you get to sit. Okay? Avoid sitting in a comfortable position or cross-legged in front of an older person or superior. It is also taboo to have your hand or hands in your pockets while interacting with an older person or superior. Is there such a rule in the West? Okay. Do not shake a leg while sitting. You know why? It's a very well-known taboo. When you do this, it is believed that you're chasing away good luck. Okay? So someone will always say that if you're like sitting and you're shaking your leg. I don't know where that came from. Covering your mouth when yawning or laughing, especially for females. Or is this a universal norm? But I think it's more pronounced in Korea. Yeah? Yes? I think that's a very good point. For yawning, it's almost universal that you cover your mouth. But when laughing, it's, there's no real norm that you should be covering your mouth. But in Korea, it's more strictly followed. Okay? Don't blow your nose in the presence of others, out of consideration for others. Do not use red ink in writing a person's name. Does anybody know why this is true? Yes? Why? Well, this is from Chinese tradition. Red is a color of good luck, actually. Okay? Yes. There's this tradition that you write the name of the dead person in red ink. Okay? So if you have someone back home you really hate, write a letter. And write the person, just kidding. You should never hate anybody. Do not leave a spoon or chopstick standing in your rice bowl. Why? Do you know why this is the case? Not funeral, but ancestral rite. During ancestral rite, you know how Koreans prepare tables full of foods? And you symbolically put the spoon standing in the rice bowl so that the spirits of the deceased can eat the foods that are prepared. So if you do this at a restaurant, you're vulgarizing this sacred tradition. Okay? When drinking alcohol in a group setting, Koreans don't fill their own glass. They fill each other's glass and often offer their own empty glass to other members in the group. I think if you're faced with this situation for the first time, you'll be grossed out. I don't know. It takes getting some used to. Anyway, it's a sure thing to sort of promote friendliness among people who are sharing empty glasses. Okay? Turning sideways when drinking alcohol in front of an older person. Wow, if any foreigner does this, you'll win the big hearts of all the Koreans. When toasting, lower your glasses just slightly below those of superiors. Public display of overtly affectionate behavior is frowned upon. Is this true? You notice that? Or is it something, it's even worse in Korea now? No, maybe you get to probably walk around more than I do. So maybe things have changed. I need to update this. Yes? So you're saying that it's more pronounced in Korea? Well, what can you say about young people? They like to break the rules. So I think it's still sort of not welcomed, but it's still happening nonetheless. Yes. You know, if you have time, I hope you look up what is called the history of kissing. And I'm sure there is a book, such book. As you all know, kissing is not something that's like as practiced as in Europe or in the West, right? And I wonder why that is the case. You know, why is it that Europeans are more, or Westerners are more open to kissing, whereas Asians as a whole are not kissing people? Where does this tradition like originate? Anyway, thank you. Young people don't smoke in front of older people, and when paying, you know, among young people, going Dutch is very popular, right? But outside of the campus setting, in a typical social setting, it's still one person paying for for everyone, right? And well, tipping. If you read some of these brochures introducing about Korean culture, they say tipping is not practiced. That's outdated. Okay, tipping is welcomed, especially by taxi drivers and service workers. Okay, especially at, like for example, restaurants. If course meals are served, people usually give them tip. Or if you go to a place that cooks, where the meat is cooked for you right in front of you, that's when tipping is welcome too. Okay? All right. Before moving on, am I missing any Korean norms that you find interesting or important? Yes. Oh, that's what we do right away. Yeah, when we meet someone for the first time, before we part, we typically find out how old the other person is. Okay? Because based on that, for example, when two people meet for the first time, let's say they're in their 30s, they talk, and when it comes time to pay, who's going to pay? Older person. So there's one consequence of an action that happens because they find out about each other's age. Okay? So usually we find out about the age which university we were from, but age is always most commonly sort of detected, okay? But eventually we also find out what university the other person is from, and also which region the person was born from. 3 things: age, university, birthplace. Okay? All right, anyone else on Korean norms? Okay, now we turn to the 4th of the 5 Korean beliefs. Beliefs, you know, I told you, right? There are 10,000 cultures. Even the smallest culture with maybe 1,000 people will have beliefs. Okay? So beliefs provide answers to the ultimate questions like death, right? Afterlife, and so on. And also questions about the meaning of life. Shared beliefs are part of what binds people together in society, and beliefs are also the basis for many of the norms and values of a given culture. Although beliefs can stem from all these, beliefs, most important beliefs, stem from religion. So I think I mentioned before, it's when you hear belief, it's sort of, you may not have a sort of a full grasp of what beliefs refer to, but for convenience, think of it as a religion, because again, beliefs typically derive from religion in most cultures. Okay. So, from which religions do Koreans derive their beliefs? Yes. Thank you. Shamanism. What else? Yes. Christianity. Buddhism. Yes. Confucianism. Thank you. So Koreans derive their beliefs from 4 religions, and I'm not going to talk about Buddhism and Christianity because they're world religions. If you have any curiosity about these religions, Wikipedia, just love send. Amazing stuff, right? As a basic introduction, right? But I'll just briefly talk about shamanism because it's so important to Koreans. And the thing about Buddhism is this. Yes, Buddhism is the 2nd largest religion, but somehow when it comes to people's values, their practices, practically no impact. Okay? Why? I don't know of too many Buddhists who practice meditation. I don't know of any Buddhist other than some monks, not every monk, okay, who practice veganism. Okay? Veganism is a thing for Buddhists because, as you know, Buddhism believes in reincarnation. After death, one is reborn as a different form based on karma. One is accrued in the lifetime, right? So that's why you even stepping on an ant is a cardinal sin in Buddhism. And yet, Buddhists, they're meat killers, meaning they eat a lot of meat. And anyway, so I just focus on 2 things, shamanism and Confucianism. And even if you know, just hear me out. Shamanism is an animistic religion which believes that everything has a spirit. Everything. Okay? Like rocks, trees, mountains, the sun, the moon, stars, and house. So there will be a house spirit, but inside the house, there are also kitchen spirit, room spirit, So if you in a shamanistic scheme of things, this room has a spirit. The chair, the bench that you're sitting on, each has a spirit. Okay? And so on, right? And that's not it. These spirits exert influences on your fate. Oh, I forgot to mention another important spirit. That is the spirit of the ancestors. Okay? Spirit of the deceased person. So they all have influence on your fate, especially the ancestor spirits or the spirits of the deceased. Okay? And that's why when something bad happened, shamans were called to hold the shamanic ritual to chase away an evil spirit that is causing this particular misfortune. Okay? So, in the shamanic scheme of things, nothing happens accidentally. Everything that happens, good or bad, is caused by a spirit. And you know, I have a lot of people, like friends who are business owners. My God, they still go to shamans for fortune telling. And they also hold good shamanic ritual to chase away supposedly causing misfortune. Okay? It's just simply amazing that this is happening in this modernized, globalized society. Okay? Anyway, we'll get back to shamanism because when I talk about some of the values, it is clear that Koreans' values are largely shaped by shamanism. Okay? And then there is Confucianism. So the only thing that is religious about Confucianism is ancestor worship or ancestral rites. Okay? But the focus is more on, like, you know, harmony, education, filial piety. So it's a set of ethical norms. Okay? Like, set of norms, things you should do, like respect the elderly, respect your parents. So you can say that Confucianism is a religion of the family, or the religion of filial piety, or religion of education. Okay? Because again, the focus is more on human relationships, okay? And the obligations you have to one another. Okay? And also, in addition to these emphasis on human relationships, the only thing that is not human is education. Okay? And again, if you ever wondered why Koreans are so, you know, obsessed with education, and if you want to blame someone, it's Confucius. Okay? And I really detest him. I do. Because of the education held in Korea is owed to this guy. Okay? Just a personal comment. Now, the only thing I want to say about Christianity is that it is the largest religion in Korea, the Protestant Christianity, that is. Okay? So, as I'll show you next, well, the fact that we have 4 religions as from which Koreans derive their beliefs, this is shown in this particular slide or graph. So when it comes to religious diversity in the world, Asia Pacific is the only area or continent which has a very high religious diversity. Okay? As you can see, there are Christians, there are Muslims, there are Hindus, there are Buddhists, you know, followers of folk religions. But if you look at every other continent, there's usually one dominant religion. Okay? Or in the case of Middle East, one very dominant. Also Latin America, one very dominant. Okay? And I think this one should also be, low, right? Because the dominant religion is Christianity, okay? And every other religion has a very minor presence. So here is the religious population in Korea, and so you know why we have only like data from 1985? The census on religious population was added only from 1985, okay? So that's why we have data only from 1985, and the last census we had was 2015, and for the first time ever in the history of Korea, Protestant Christianity is the #1 religion, okay? With about 10 million followers, or about 20% of the population. Second largest religion is Buddhism, at about 7.6 million, or 15.5% of the total population, followed by the third largest religion, Catholicism, with nearly 4 million followers, or 7.9% of the total population. Now, if you're a keen observer, by looking at this table, something that should have caught your attention is this. Why is this noteworthy? Because 56% of Koreans do not have religion. Now, do you think that's high, low, or an average of the world? What do you think? Very high. So here is a pie graph. No religion, 56.1%, right? Now, this is 2015. From the same year, look at this. Only 16.4% of the world population professes no religion. So Korean population, or the proportion of Koreans with no religion, it's about 4 times higher than the world average. Okay? So if you're into Korean studies and you want to write a paper on some topic, whether it's here at KU or back home, this is an excellent topic. Why there are so many Koreans who have no religious affiliation. Okay? I'll tell you one factor why this is the case. Okay? If you know Korean history, the last dynasty was from 1392 to 1910. Well, do you know what happened in that period as far as religion was concerned? And you could look at other countries to see if something similar happened. But during the Joseon dynasty, every religion was banned except Confucianism. Okay? So for over like 6 centuries, Koreans lived with no religion because Confucianism, the only religious thing was this ancestor worship. Right? But they didn't go to any place on a regular basis to pray to God, right? The only time they prayed, it was to pray to their ancestors for the well-being, for their own well-being, you know? And what happened during the Japanese colonial period? Religion was suppressed too, okay? So the reason why, if I show you, see, when you look at the 1950 to 1962, less than 10% of the Korean population had any religion. And this is a result of the centuries of religious oppression. And I don't know if you know of any other country where religions were this much suppressed. Okay? Yes, in many countries where one religion is dominant, other religions are suppressed. That is true. But in Korea, all the religions were suppressed in the name of like a pseudo-religion, not really religion, Confucianism, right? So that's why we have this, at least if I could just share with you one factor which may explain why so many Koreans tend to have no religious affiliation. Okay? Now, just for fun, okay? This is not really related to Korea per se. Now, which nationalities consider religion most important? Or, more simply put, are people living in poor nations or people living in developed nations more likely to be religious? What do you think? Yes. Yes. So, if you look at the socioeconomic background of people who are religious, people from a lower socioeconomic background tend to be more sympathetic to religions. Okay, and you could sort of generalize that to the national context. Okay, so here we go. So you can see the countries in the top, every single one of them are the poorest countries in the world. Okay? And there's this one country that sort of stands out. Okay? Again, the rule of the thumb is that rich countries or developed countries, people in those countries do not consider religion to be very important in their lives. There's one exception, one country that is an exception. Which country is that? Anyone from the United States? Oh, that's the answer. So here we go. So again, the countries in the bottom are all developed countries, maybe with the exception of China and Russia, they're developing. But, oops. The US is here. So 53% of Americans consider religion to be very important. And, you know, I've lived in the States for 1 year, and also just observing things that are happening in the US, really different. And religion definitely has a much more important role to play in that society, and it is shown in this particular graph. Okay? So here's another thing. Generally, poor nations tend to be religious, wealthy less so, except for the US. And here we go. So again, the most developed countries are in the lower half, whereas the US stands out. Okay? And, you know, US is just different. All right. We now have come to the last of the 5 keywords in understanding Korean culture and its Korean values. Values are ideals about what is right or wrong, good or bad, and desirable or undesirable in a particular culture. Values do not dictate which behaviors are appropriate and which ones are not, but they provide us with the criteria by which we evaluate people, objects, and events. Values typically come in pairs of positive and negative values, such as being brave or cowardly, hardworking or lazy. To get a better sense of what values truly mean, can you name the most important values of Americans? I sort of intentionally sort of refer to American values because those are the sources that I'm most familiar with, other than Koreans. Okay? Yes? Okay, let's just say freedom. Freedom. What else? Individualism. Thank you. What else? You see, I bet you you could ask about your own country's values and list up to 20, if you could. And I think I mentioned this when we first met. We are animals of values. You see, we cannot do anything. We cannot make any decisions without values. Because from small decisions, like whether should I go for, whether should I eat cake right now, or, you know, whether I should marry this guy or whatever, every decision, I would say, you know, is based on values we hold. But because we take these values for granted, when you're asked to identify what the most important values are, personally or as a member of a particular culture, they're dumbstruck. They can only like mention 3 to 5. So I would not blame anybody if you can only come up with a handful. Because, you know, I've held, let's say, a lecture like this to, you know, a room full of professors, most learned people. They could only come up with 3 or 5 at the most. That's how we take values for granted. And I like to mention one more time that, yes, this is about Korean values, but we also all have individual values, personal values, right? Whether it's friendship, whether it's happiness, whatever the case may be, you got to remind yourself what your most important values are, okay? So, back to American values, we have freedom, we have individualism. What else? Just mention 2 more or 3. Yes? Liberty. Yes. I don't know if it's on the list, but you should. Anyone else? 2 more. And you don't have to be an American to say what American values are. 3? We only have 3. Liberty, freedom, individualism, justice in French. Just kidding. One of my favorite movies all time is Pink Panther, featuring Steve Martin. And he would just vulgarize French pronunciation. Justice. Anyway, thank you. Justice, definitely one of the key American values. One more before we move on to Korean values. What about honesty? It is. Do you think honesty is a key Korean value? It is not. Confucius never argued, you've got to be honest, right? It's always, you obey your parents or you obey your older brothers, right? But nothing about honesty. That's why corruption is a big problem in Korea. But anyway, here are some American values, and the list is not exhaustive, but here we go. Success. Prestige. These are from surveys, okay? Not just one, but many. Wealth. Power. Individualism. Family. Equality. And you probably think by now, how could that be true? So values are not necessarily reflected in reality. Okay? Why do I say that? Yes, family is very important to Americans, but the US boasts one of the highest divorce rates in the world. And Korea, the same thing. Okay? So equality, same thing. is well, let me honesty, hard work, justice, freedom, democracy. Liberty could be put under there. Patriotism, the do-it-yourself attitude, belief in science and technology to solve problems, and charity toward others. Now, I don't know if you know, but U.S. as a whole, or Americans, when it comes to donations to charity, Americans have the highest per capita donations in the world. Okay? So this one, it also reflected in reality. Now you know, right? I think knowing these will help you better grasp what Korean values are, right? Yeah, I think you have a better sense, right? Now we turn to Korean values. What are the most important values of Koreans? And you could steal some from the list of Americans. Hardworking. Hard work, yes, that's one. What else? Respect. You see, one complaint I have about Confucianism is this. You know, what's that verse from the Bible that says, treat others as you would like others to treat you, right? Something like that. Isn't that a beautiful idea? And it's universally treat others like you like yourself to be treated by others. It's an idea that is also found in Islam, Buddhism, Judaism, and so on, except Confucianism. Because Confucianism qualifies that by saying, respect the elderly. Okay? But isn't it more beautiful to be more inclusive? Respect everyone. Okay? Whether the person is younger or subordinate. Respect. Right? So, that student mentioned respect, but we should qualify that by respect elderly. Okay? So that's two. What was the first one? Hard work and respect elderly and education. Thank you. And I'll show you, I don't know if I have the particular slide, but currently more than, well, can anyone tell me what percentage of high school graduates move on to college in your country? Roughly. From what I know, most developed countries, their university enrollment rate among high school graduates is between 40 to 60%. Okay, 60 would be very high, like countries like Canada, right? But Korea boasts nearly 80%. Not nearly 80, but between 70 to 80% of high school graduates move on to college education. Okay? Even if they do have to serve at McDonald's, you somehow have a college degree. Okay? Anyway, I've lost my slides, and we have education, hard work, and what's the other one? Respect for the elderly. Let's mention two more before I let you go. Hard work, respect for the elderly, and education. And two more for now, for today. Very good. Family. That's four. One more. Beauty. We have what is called emerging values, and beauty is one of the values that emerged more recently. Okay, we'll put that in a separate category under emerging values. Okay, and come back to that later. Anyone else? Any Korean response? Very good. Yes, wealth. Okay. You know, I'm sure many of you found Koreans to be rather materialistic. No. And I'll explain to you why that is the case. Okay. There is a perfect reason for this. Okay. Anyone else? So we have 5 now, and I have 3 more minutes. Wow, maybe it's the lack of sleep. Let me try to recount the 5. Education, wealth, hard work, respect for the elderly, and it's always the 5th one that's, what's the 5th one? Family. Okay. 2 more. Anyone? Yes. Wow. Health. Yes. And I'll explain to you why health is important to Koreans. Of course, health is universally important, but it's much more pronounced in Korea. Okay? And again, I'll explain to you why that is the case. Okay? Last call. Anyone else? Environment, very good, and that would be under emerging values. Okay? Not sort of a traditionally shaped, but more recent. Anyone else? Yes. Yes, very good. Collectivism. You know, if the West is characterized by individualism, Koreans, collectivism. It's so strong, you know. You can never do anything almost just by thinking about yourself. It's always in view of how what you say, how what you do are received and perceived by others. Okay? Of course, we have gotten a lot better. Okay? Did you know that 20 years ago, professors wore suits to classes? Okay? Except me, of course. But that's collectivism, because you just cannot stand out. You got to do what everyone else does. Okay? Anyway, so I hope you could remind me of the 6 we have, right? All right. So I'll stop here, and I'll see you on Wednesday.